Okay, I think you guys are live.
All right. Hey everybody, welcome to our first Campfire live chat. I'm Chris Sand. I'm here with Mike Maglin. Our production assistant is Lori Mraz. She's in the background. She's going to be fielding your questions today, so make sure you hit us up on our Facebook page and send any questions to her, and she'll throw them to us. Just like all of you, we're practicing our social distancing. So we decided to come up with a unique way to still communicate with you and kind of give you some insight as to what's going on into our lives. Without being able to bowl right now, what we came up with was we have many books on our website. Make sure you visit turbogrips.com and check out the multiple books that we have that you can be reading in your downtime right now. So Monday, when the order was passed that all of us had to basically go home and shut down for 3 weeks, we kind of came up with this unique idea to introduce you to Campfire Live, and we chose our first book, which is Earl by Barry Sparks, the greatest bowler of all time. So Mike, Lori, and I actually all tackled this book and dove into it, and we've had some communications about it prior to this Campfire Live, and it was unique in how it kind of touched each one of us differently. The one thing that I took away from it early on, and it's a very good read actually, it's an easy read, but it talked about all facets of Earl's life from his beginning. One of the fascinating facts that I didn't really know, he didn't pick up a bowling ball till the age of 21, which was kind of unique. But most of the early years is what really intrigued me. I was always a big practice guy, maybe even practiced a little too much. So I interpreted this book one way, and I know you interpreted it completely different. So in the early years, he talked about practice. The first thing that I took away is if you go in on page 31, it talked about how he threw 107 pins, 110 pins, 100 buckets, and 100 pocket shots every single day.
Every day.
Every day. And that's fascinating to me because I'll go back to my daughter, and we start talking about practicing and getting better, and she's kind of elevating her game. And when I ask her questions about her practice, it doesn't necessarily go into how many games, it's more of a time frame. I know when I was out on tour, one of the most asked questions in the Pro-Am was, how many games a week do you bowl? And when I was bowling at my height, I was bowling easily 100 games a week, and it kind of came with a self of pride, a self of accomplishment, to where you could give a number, and it made me reflect on my daughter and even the kids coming up. I don't know if they really have that opportunity to do it, so it started getting me to brainstorm a little bit more and how can we do it, and how can we get these kids into the bowling center and get them to practice, maybe even 50 games a week. So I know we're all in a unique situation nowadays with everything that's going on, but that's kind of a unique situation and how the game has evolved. So that whole aspect of it, again, it was early on in the book, but the whole practice aspect, I know it touched you in a different light.
Yeah, and even to go on what Chris said too is, he didn't pick up a ball till he was 21. He didn't even go on tour till he was actually even 31 years old.
Right.
So what he did in that short time period is actually pretty amazing, and obviously kind of why they wrote this book. But yeah, how it touched me a little bit differently, and I didn't realize it till I kind of slept on it overnight and mulled it over a little bit more this morning, and had a discussion with my wife as she was working from home. Honestly, this was one of the biggest struggle I've had in my bowling career, I would say, up to this point. And I really didn't know why, and I've been practicing and trying different layouts, and just, I think it kind of hit me today actually after reading and reviewing some of these things. And it's just, he had this desire. He worked at a grocery store, the entire time until he decided to go full-time on tour. So he didn't have a career per se. He had a job to bring in income for his family and whatnot. But I'm at a point where I have a great career. I'm in the bowling industry. I have a great family. I have, everything that I need in life. So bowling to me now is much different than when I was much younger. Although it's just as important, I think I've lost some of that inner drive, and I find myself settling probably a little bit too many times, and I've lost some of that fuel and energy. I haven't got far enough to think about where I'm going to get that back from. But I think that is why I've had these struggles over the last year. I just don't have that desire. I enjoy being out there and hanging with my friends. I think from entertainment and fun, portion of the game. But as far as the competitive side inside of me, for some reason, that's just kind of went away. So, in conjunction with that too, one thing he also mentioned, or the writer actually mentions in the book too, is Earl never complained. I mean, he never complained about lane conditions. He never complained about the shot being too hard, too easy. And that's, one thing he talks about in Earl's mental game that made him so much better than everyone else is the strong mental game. Not about just being mental toughness, but ignoring all of those other things that I see being in the bowling industry and bowling for many, many years that people do all too often. The left side was too easy. The right side was too easy. The oil pattern didn't play as it should. Guys are using urethane when they shouldn't. So that wasn't Earl's game. He never did that. And that's one thing they talk about a lot throughout the book is Earl's consistency and his mental toughness that he has. I think a different mental toughness that most people think about.
Well, and he evolved too. We talk about reflection. It hit you one way, and it made me reflect back on I guess my PBA career. I wouldn't say it was very successful. It was a failed PBA career.
That's not true.
Well, it was.
That's not true.
It wasn't
you
as.
learned a lot from that.
I did learn a lot, but it wasn't as successful as I would have thought it would have been. I would have liked to have done a little bit better. But it talked about again in the book that Earl learned that over the years.
Starting with pot bowling.
Yeah, and he was a hothead. You
Yeah.
know, I forget exactly who it was. Said I saw him. Early on when he wasn't out on tour, and then I saw him 10 years later when he became a superstar, and he reveled at the fact that how he changed his mental game. It said Earl was an invert. He didn't really hang out with a lot of people, but he asked the right questions apparently because he turned his career around. So again, as far as reflection, it went back. Did I not ask the right questions? What did I miss? Where did I go wrong? Because Earl wasn't exactly great that first year, although it was only 3 events. But it was unique too in the things that you were offered too, because the one thing that I took away, a lot of Earl's first titles were on that summer tour swing. It wasn't on the winter tour swing.
Right.
They were the summer tour swing. So again, a little bit more opportunity to kind of hone your craft and develop the longevity of it, where I unfortunately came in at the wrong time, and they changed formats and changed the way it went.
But that was
Now
tough.
I'm
There
here.
was a lot of mental toughness. I mean, in your day, it was exempt tour. That was if you had an exempt tour when you started bowling.
Yeah, I mean, we had to bowl match play.
A lot of adversity.
There wasn't as many games as there were. I talk about it now all the time about how there were so many more games back in the day.
Marathons.
Marathons,
Not
yeah.
sprints, no.
I mean, you always found a way to. You were never looking for 250. You were looking for 2-0, because if you bowled. 2-0 was just going to keep grinding. You're going to gain pins. Where nowadays a lot of the formats are sprints, and I'm going to stand here and I'm going to try and shoot 240, because if I shoot 140, I got a better chance of shooting 240 from here, even if it's playing the wrong part of the lane. Where I didn't really grow up that way. You try and find the right part of the lane and try and not bowl your max score, but kind of grind it out all the time.
So you said you feel your PBA career was. Maybe not as what you'd hoped it it'd be, obviously, when you were younger. But
it hit me a lot of times when they talked about anybody, all the guys out here have talent, but it takes a little bit different to win.
But they also talk about Earl, some of the time in here too, when he was younger, that he put in his time. He started, bowling in his leagues and was the best league bowler, and then he started staying after and pot bowling some of the guys from the other leagues. And he would consistently lose $40 here, $40, and that was a lot of money, especially not only back in the day.
But how about the dedication? Because he was still working at the grocery store,
absolutely.
And then he would bowl the night league.
Absolutely, and he'd work a whole day just to lose that money at nighttime. So do you?
It was crazy.
So do you feel that maybe and you talk about all those shots he put in? Was it just you weren't able to put in the time? Did you not put in the time? Is that a regret you have?
No, I thought I was a practice rat. I don't think that I didn't. I don't think that I didn't practice enough. What I feel is I didn't ask enough questions.
So what advice can you give maybe to some of the high school bowlers, collegiate bowlers out there after reading this?
Well, I don't want them to come and ask me questions all the time.
but as in general, that they need to ask more questions to their coaches, their parents, themselves. Do they need to identify themselves?
I don't know. I'm still searching.
Okay.
The book sucked for me. I mean, it took me back
to
some. It was very humbling.
I agree. It was a very humbling book.
I mean, it's very interesting. I don't mean to say that, but again, reflecting on it, I went back to, you know, some of the days where I thought maybe I should have done a little bit better, and he found a way to do it. Not that I say it could ever be in Earl's category, don't get me wrong, but, you know, I would have thought I would have won a couple of times out there, and it just didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys both read the chapter, the Lefty versus Righty, or the Righty versus Lefty? Mm-hmm. So give us some perspective on that, because over the years...
Well, we're going to have a different perspective, too, on this.
We're different Lefty and Righty, obviously.
It's a right-handed player, but there's always that controversy. Mm-hmm. So how did the author relate that whole situation with Earl? Because Earl was a southpaw, right? He was a lefty, so...
I've never really... Obviously, I hear the lefty versus righty controversy, but I had always been one that I don't want to say I necessarily agreed with it, but I felt that the lefty should have to be able to play more than just their favorite line. You know, I practiced a lot playing first arrow, second arrow, third arrow, fourth arrow, fifth arrow. I wasn't afraid to adapt. But the hard part about that was I wasn't given enough opportunity to learn when to adapt. You know, it's not like the righties are out there, you know, playing fourth arrow one week and then having to play first arrow the next week. They get to kind of camp out and figure some things out. It wasn't as sporadic. So I agreed with Earl in you know, adapting and trying to find new things. I took great pride in being a lefty that could actually play in, and, you know, made some money at the mini eliminator 1 year in front of the ball return. You know, it's still one that, you know, that those were the days, yeah. No, and this book made me feel old thinking about the good old days.
Did you pull any of those, Mike?
Those were not exactly. Yeah, those.
Still too young then?
I was still too young then. So, you know, one thing I found that I didn't actually know, and to me there was a lot of, I think for someone more my age, there's a lot of history in this. There's a lot of history in this book. First of all, I'll be honest, I literally hate to read. Like, I just can't sit down and read. Like, I like to move around. So it was painful for me to have to sit down on the couch and have to start reading. But once I honestly got into it, like, I found it really was, and I can say that honestly, it started to get me more into it the more I read it. And it's not you have to go through and read every chapter, because every chapter kind of bounces around. It's not like it reads consecutively. You can read, you know, chapters and bounce around.
And the chapters are short too.
Yeah, absolutely. 10, 12 pages, most of them. 15 pages.
As a reader, I'm always looking to see when I'm getting to the next chapter. So when the chapters are relatively short.
But going back to what Chris said with the lefties, or we start with the lefty-righty conversation, I found it interesting. They even discussed 30 years ago having asymmetrical and symmetrical oil patterns back then, and not all tournaments still comply with that. We see it happen here and there a little. I think the USBC Open Championships, some of our local events such as Brian Reagan and things like that, they have adapted to those lefty-righty oil patterns, but I'm surprised that we don't see them more to allow patterns to develop.
Mika's
cater to.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, Mika. I'm sure it's nice and sunny where you're at, nice and warm.
It is 60 out here today, so it's not too bad here.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be a case. The one fascinating thing that I took away from it is that how important, I mean, we talk about topography, but I don't think the average bowler really understands topography. I mean, the USBC has done a good job in putting out topographs at the US Open and the Masters, but they talked about the reason why the lefty-righty thing really happened is the lanes weren't resurfaced every single year, and going and making it mandatory to being resurfaced every single year. So, you know, what does that say about synthetics?
Sure.
You know, do they? We know that they still build topography into it, even into synthetics, but you know, it's a hard question. It's really a tough question. I'd hate to see it. I didn't like when I read that they were talking about making a percentage of the format. If there was X amount of lefties would make the top 24 or whatever it was. I'm glad they didn't go to that. That was kind of unique.
I read that, yeah.
But I just think it's something unique that it's interesting, again, to go back and reflect and see we've had a lot of these same conversations.
And they're still going on today. I mean, these are never-ending conversations that we're having 30 years later.
It's always going to continue to go on, and now we even, I mean, maybe we throw the lefty-righty thing out the window, and now we're talking about the two-handers versus the one-handers or the guys who are using their thumbs. So
Steve Landry's calling you out, by the way, Mike. Mike's a young guy, LOL.
Yeah. so
Gardner's watching too.
once again, I'm the old guy.
Well, with this thing going on, I haven't been able to get a haircut, so you might notice a little bit of... I think this is a good segue also into
Tommy Kress is watching,
maybe the money.
Tommy Kress mentioned in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I did read it,
yeah. He's in the foreword, I think, right?
Tommy Kress mentioned in the book.
Yeah.
I think this is a good segue also now into the money aspect of, how much money not only did he earn, but do you feel like bowlers, they talked about comparing even then PBA bowlers to PGA golfers, and I think at one point it stated that his biggest year was $143,000, and the average golfer, then the top 10 was already making like $3 million a year. Do you feel like bowlers are underappreciated? We talk about all these things like topography and oil patterns, and is golf even less complicated, do you feel, than bowling? I mean, we're not at that level, obviously, near in golf, but do you feel like bowlers are maybe undervalued from...
No, I think the one thing that golf has versus bowling is there is a recipe to success. Golf is kind of going through this whole phenomenon of hitting it too far. But you can go out and you can bang golf balls, 1,000 golf balls a day, and you can hit it straight, or you can figure out to put a little fade onto it, or whatever you need to do to get around. Bowling, you can't do that. Because if I throw a perfectly executed shot in the wrong part of the lane, it's never going to strike.
True.
So how do you know where to play and when to play it? Not saying golf is easy or easier, but if I know I have to hit it 150 yards, I've worked on it an awful lot to hit it 150 yards. But now if I have to play a pattern to start the day and I'm trying to create, 400 RPMs and my tilt is this and my ball speed is this, how do you then repeat it that much? It's very difficult to take a 15-pound object, get it to revolve the same rate every single time and throw the exact same ball speed, hitting a 1-inch target 40 feet away from you, trying to knock down over 36 pounds of mass. It's very, very difficult. So golf at least has an easier formula on how to be great.
The equation is visible.
Correct.
Yeah.
What would I tell a young person now in how to be great? There's a lot of, you got to go do it, you got to practice, you got to put your time in, and you kind of evolve and see where it's going. And I'm going through that right now. I'm living through that right now. I mean, my daughter, again, I go back to my daughter, as you guys know, it revolves most of my life nowadays. But how can I get her better? Because she wants to be better, and we're making the transition. We started out just bowling in high school, and now we're 2-time junior gold, hopefully going back this year in July.
Fingers crossed.
Didn't do that great last year, middle of the, so we're evolving and we're getting better, but how good do I really know she can be? I think she could be great. I hope she can be great, but I don't really have that formula for her to say, this is what you have to do in order to get to the PWBA Tour, where I think golfers kind of have an easier formula to see what you have to do in order to get to the PGA or the LPGA Tour.
Yeah. And you talked about Allison potentially, continue climbing. I mean, he had a lot of ups and downs. There was years he wanted to quit. There were years he was thinking about coming back. The year he was almost ready to quit was his best year ever.
Yeah, that was amazing.
And he finally decided, I'm going to try and reach, and he did obviously reach that $1 million all-time earnings. He was ready to quit that year.
Yeah.
And he said, you know what, I got this close. This is my next goal. Yeah. Which I related to once again because he keeps getting that fuel to continuously want to win out there.
So
what was that stat you said? Because he was the first $1 million man. Or no, it was the tournament that he won, you said. What was that?
He won $1 million in 1 year, and it was $1
million a lifetime. Yeah, he was the first $1 million.
Equivalent to how much?
It was $143,000 he won. It was his best year on the PBA Tour, which actually there was a funny stat. The placeholder for the New York Giants that year made $163,000. The place kicker.
And they make fun of kickers.
Yeah, the place kicker. The guy who literally just holds the football. Made more than the best bowler in the world. That year.
As you guys can see, this book can bring up and spark up a lot of conversation. Again, it's a really, really good read. Highly recommend it. Again, visit our website turbogrips.com. Check out Earl.
We put a chapter.
Yes. We put a chapter on our website too.
On the homepage of our website, right?
Yep. The Preparing to Win chapter is on the website. So if you go to turbogrips.com, you can go and read that entire chapter. I think that's a really, really good chapter. to kind of draw you in. And if that interests you, as I said, we do have the book available, obviously, on our website.
Yeah, so we would ask you to go, our fans at home, to go to turbogrips.com.
Stu Williams watching.
Stu Williams.
Yeah, do you want to say anything to Stu?
I actually saw Stu and Chris Barnes doing one of these, not a campfire, but they were talking yesterday, and it was pretty interesting to see Stu and Chris together. Probably have some sort of debate knowing those two.
Yeah, honestly, to wrap this up too, I think it's just great to see everyone in the bowling community, whether you work, whether you bowl. I mean, my social media is just flooded with different ideas that people have. Obviously, during this time when there's this going on, social media is becoming a really positive thing for everybody. We're just kind of feeling the energy, obviously, continue in the bowling world, that I think when we do return, I don't think there's going to be any lost steps, I'm hoping, with all that we're seeing, via the social media.
I do have to say one thing to Andrew Anderson, that new thing on social media where you have to show a strike or whatever it is. He
didn't strike.
He didn't strike, but he actually called me out. And Andrew, I went to my phone and I have no video of me striking.
I have one, trust me.
At all, so
Dave Jr.'s watching
I can't post anything.
I have one I can find out
Dave,
for you
make sure
too.
you're Dave, go cook me something, on that egg. He made a great pork shoulder or something on Monday as we were leaving, so we thank you for that. But anyways, go to our website. We have many other books on our website, and send us your suggestion as to which one you would like us to read next and have our next campfire talk. If you don't reach out to us, we're going to choose, just like we chose Earl, and I think it was a really good selection.
Absolutely.
For our first one. It brought up a lot of great talking points. So again, we recommend that you go to turbogrips.com, purchase this book, read it, send us some comments, and let us know what you thought of it.
Absolutely.
So thanks. That's our first campfire talk. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We hope everybody's safe,
healthy.
And healthy at home, and
we'll hope to see everybody on the lane sooner than later, but obviously,
yeah,
we're doing what we can here in the meantime.
So we appreciate everybody. We love you, and hope to see you guys soon.